Hey everybody, today we are doing a wonderful cool weather classic. We are doing beef bourguignon, but we're doing it out on the PitBoss smoker. This is going to be a good one. Comfort food, delicious, and great for the holidays. It may not be easy to tell down here in southern Florida, but I have my holiday cup from Starbucks this morning, and we're making an awesome meal. Beef bourguignon is such a classic. It's delicious. It's in all the classic French cookbooks, and it is absolutely phenomenal. There's a lot of variations to it. I'm going to show you how we do it out on the PitBoss Pro Series smoker. You can do it in an oven, you can do it on a stovetop, you can do it in a slow cooker, and you absolutely can do it outside. And we love doing that just to keep the heat from out of the house. And frankly, it's enjoyable being outside cooking. So let me talk a little bit about the ingredients we'll need for this one. So beef bourguignon is a very tender meat that cooks for several hours. So because of that, we are using a chuck roast. Now I'm using this thing. It's about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick, which is perfect because I want about 2 inch by 2 inch squares. So I've got about 3 pounds of chuck roast. You want about 1/2 to 3/4 pound of bacon. I'm actually using this nice pork belly strip here. We're just going to cut that up in small pieces. That gives it some amazing flavor. Now into that, we're certainly going to saute some onions. Typically carrots are in there. My family's not a big fan, so we're going to leave the carrots out. We'll have some mushrooms and these wonderful little pearl onions that we'll prep here in just a little bit. That's essentially the hearty part of this, if you will. Now, we certainly have the seasonings: salt, pepper, bay leaves, thyme, and oregano. You're going to need all of those. And we need beef stock, and you want a good Burgundy style red wine. I'm using a Pinot Noir from Robert Mondavi. It's a lower to mid-priced range when you start looking at these. You can spend anywhere from $8 to $30 for a bottle of wine. Now remember, the old saying is you don't cook with wine you wouldn't drink. So this is actually pretty good to drink, but I did not go top of the line. I didn't buy a $30 bottle to put in this. Now, this isn't always an inexpensive meal. Like just going to the grocery store to buy these items you're seeing on the table, it's probably going to run you 40 to 50 bucks, right? But this is a good one, and it's going to feed 6 people. I'm going to go ahead and cut the bacon or pork belly, whatever you happen to be using, first. By the way, bacon cuts a lot easier if it's very cold. So especially if you're doing your cooking outside, but heck, it works inside too. I like to throw mine in the freezer for about 35 minutes before I'm going to cut it. It allows it to stay nice and solid, makes it a little bit easier to cut, keeps those stringy pieces from coming in there. I like to do these in fairly small pieces so that you get this kind of in your mouth along with any of the sauce and or gravy. You don't necessarily have to pick it up with your fork. It just sort of sticks to all the wonderfulness that is in beef bourguignon. All right, so we just have ourselves a nice little pan here and our cut up bacon and our pork belly. Let's go ahead and put this right on the stove. We're just going to go ahead and brown it up for about 3 to 5 minutes, and we're going to stir constantly. And now it's just a matter of rendering this down in the pan. I'm not even going to use any oil because frankly, this has plenty of oil in it. It's going to render down beautifully. Just got this on low heat. We'll let it render. So let's go ahead and start preparing our chuck. We want to cut this down into about 2 inch square pieces or cubed pieces. If you have any really thick fat in here that you're afraid won't render down, don't hesitate to cut it out of there. But the beauty of this kind of a cut is there's not all that much on it. There's a little bit on the top and a little bit on the bottom. When I get to that section, I will cut that out exactly. And if any of this fat will render down, by all means, leave it in there. You know the saying, right? Fat is flavor. You can kind of see our pieces here. We just want to go with about a 2 inch piece or so and just cut that right on through. That is perfect. They don't have to be exact, but ideally what we want is we want them all to cook relatively at the same speed. Just going to lay this all out in a nice single file here, or single layer, not single file. This isn't a military march. Now with that, we want to go ahead and go with a little bit of coarse ground pepper across this whole thing. And we'll do the same thing with salt. Now this is going to be really flavorful, but when I'm browning it, I like to have this meat seasoned, especially with the salt. It helps extract out some of that moisture. I'm just going to flip these guys over, do the same on the other side. Now with these guys all seasoned up, before we go ahead and brown them in our actual pan, let's go ahead and just check on this pork fat or bacon. I think it's about ready. Look at that. That's exactly what we want to see right here. And you see just how much of that fat has rendered out of that. So let's pull that off and get it on a plate. All right. We've got our bacon right here, our pork belly. I keep saying bacon because you can certainly use either. Should probably have bought a better utensil for this, but this is what I have brought with me. Put this on low heat now. We'll get ready to start browning this meat. You just put the camera right on top. We're just going to set it in, cook it for 2 or 3 minutes. What we don't want is we don't want it to be gray, and that's the reason why we put salt in this. We want it to extract out some of the moisture, and then we dab it with a paper towel. If you don't, your meat turns sort of a grayish color. We want that char on it. That char gives it an amazing amount of flavor before we end up braising it. All of that fond on the bottom of the pot will just add to the whole dish. So. Alright, so this is about 2 minutes later or so, and that's what we want to see. See that brown, not necessarily gray. We want that brown on there for sure. Alright, so we're getting ready for the next step, which is going to be a little bit fast motion, so we want to be prepared. Most of my chuck is at this point brown on the outside, and I'm setting it aside. I have my pork fat set aside. I also will start to saute my chopped onions and chopped carrots. When we do that, we want to go for 3 or 4 minutes until they begin to get translucent. Then we're going to add in a couple of tablespoons of crushed garlic. We only want that to be in for about a minute before we put all of the meat back in, add some flour. So we have 2 or 3 tablespoons of flour. We're going to coat that around and cook that beef for 3 to 5 minutes. And the reason we do that is because the flour flavor will cook out, and that'll help thicken this as it braises for quite a bit of time. At that stage, we begin to add in our red wine and our beef broth, our pearl onions, and we start to saute this and mix it all together. We cap it and we're going to bake it. So let me show you how we do that in the smoker. Let's first chop up our onion. Now, typically you want to cut this into fairly small pieces. However, because my family's not a big fan of onions, I leave them fairly large so they're easy for them to pick out, but I really do like the flavor they add to this. And I'm going to, typically if I was doing this, I would do a 1 medium to large onion. I'm going to do a half an onion, just because of, you know, what the family here likes and doesn't like. So I'm cutting them into fairly good sizes. Again, this is all about getting good flavor in that sauce that we're going to braise this in. We also have some thyme. We're going to put some of that in there as well. And you want to use beef stock and red wine. Typically you want to do about 3 cups of red wine to about 2 cups of beef stock. I'm going to do just the opposite because I have the kids eating this, and I know they don't care for the red wine flavor. You do not have to worry about alcohol. It all cooks out, as I'm sure you're well aware. All right, so we are about ready. All right, I just took the last of the chuck out of the pot that was browning it. We're gonna go ahead and throw our onions in now. We'll start getting this to, the reason we do this is we scrape the bottom and we get a lot of that fond off of there, all that cooked flavor, and that becomes part of this overall sauce. We put the camera on the pot, kind of show you how we do this next step. Here's where we're putting in our onions and our carrots. Remember, my family's not a big fan of the carrots, so we skip that part of it. I'm just going to let these go for about 3 or 4 minutes before we get that garlic in here. So this is almost a little too hot, so we're going to put in our garlic right now. And we want to keep mixing this around, but that fond on the bottom is exactly what we want to capture here in just a minute. Okay, we are about to start putting all this in. I have my 2 cups of beef stock, and I'm going to water that down 1 more cup of just water, so I have that really rich. If you haven't used it, I love this better than bouillon stuff. It's amazing. You just put a tablespoon of that in there to 2 cups of water. It's phenomenally flavored. I'm going to open up my wine bottle here real quick. I think we are set. We're going to go with 2 cups of red wine. We've got this mixed up nice. We've got most of that fond off the bottom, some off the sides, but we'll get that off as we cook it. We're now just going to go ahead and put our beef right back in here. I'm going to put in some chopped up thyme, and we want about 2 tablespoons of flour. We're just going to sprinkle this across here. That's going to help thicken our sauce. We'll stir that in. The joys of cooking on the grill mean this pot gets very hot, so I'm using a glove here. Once you get that turned over, we want to cook this stuff on here just a little bit. Add just a tad more, another tablespoon. Oop. Keep mixing this around. You can already see it's soaked up a lot of that liquid just by doing that alone. Now, we're going to add in our bacon. And we're going to go right in with our red wine. 2 cups of red wine instead of 3 for our family, but typically it's going to be 3 cups of red wine to 2 cups of beef broth or beef bouillon. Now I'm going to pour in our beef stock. Now I'm going to do 3 cups of beef stock to 2 cups of red wine. If you're doing 3 cups of red wine, you only want to do 2 cups of beef stock. Now I do like to scrape along the bottom here because that's all that delicious fond on the bottom of the pot where we brown that beef. That flavor is going to be absolutely delicious. I'm just going to cover this up for a few minutes. We'll take a look in about 5. Now that that's heating up, it's probably going to go for another 3 minutes or so. I've got about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste I'm going to put in, and then I'm going to put in the pearl onions. And at that point, we're going to take that whole Dutch oven, we're going to put it in the smoker at 350 degrees. Now, depending on the smoker you have, you don't want it directly over the fire pot, and mine's small enough that it's going to be directly over. So what I do is I have the grates, I have the firebox closed so there's no flames coming through it, and then I take another rack that typically goes on the top rack and I put it right on top of the one below it. That way the pot is sitting up a little bit higher. For me, it's a way to help keep it from scorching on the bottom. But if you have this type of a setup, be sure you come mix this about every 20 minutes or so. And it's going to cook for somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. I'd like to say 2.5 is a good place, but again, go by temperature and doneness rather than time. So you want to come out and check it every so often, and your meat should just be tender, pull apart tender. Like, you know, fork goes right into it very, very easily. At that point, keep an eye on it. You want to make sure the liquid stays over it, right, just over the top of the meat. If at any point you need to add some liquid, go right ahead. You can just add water, by the way, because remember, what evaporates is steam only, so the flavor gets sort of concentrated. You don't have to keep adding more bouillon or red wine, for example. So you want to do that on a regular basis, and if at the end you have too much liquid, just let it continue to go with the lid off. Let some more steam go out so it thickens up a bit. I'll show you how we clean up the sauce at the end. There's definitely an important step after this is through. But we're going to give it about another 5 minutes on the stove top here, and then we're going to put it inside the smoker. See you back here in 3 or 4. All right, let's open this guy up. See just how good that looks. I'll go in with about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. Put our onions in there. Looks like we could use a few more. So that's amazing. We still have some of the wine left. I don't even have a glass out here. Cheers. Not too bad. Not too bad. So the one thing we're now going to do is put the lid on it, cover it, and we're going to go ahead and bring it into the smoker for that 2.5, 3 hours. I'm not going to put the mushrooms in yet. That's just too long for them to cook. They'll fall apart. We'll put them in about 20 minutes to the end. So let's get this into the smoker, which is sitting at about 360 degrees right now. You want it to be around 350. Around. Because we're braising, it's kind of forgiving on the exact temperature. All right, this is looking absolutely amazing. We've got a nice simmer going on. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this burner. We're going to put our lid on, and then we're going to put this guy right into the smoker. Now the reality is, you might ask, are we really smoking it or are we baking it? And honestly, we're kind of baking it, right? At the end of the day, we've got a lid on it. We're not imparting that much smoke, but it is going to be fairly amazing. Now I'm going to just crack the lid a tiny bit, and you'll notice I have this secondary rack in here. That just helps keep it off the flame a little further. And we close all the way. We'll check on this about every 15 or 20 minutes and scrape that bottom to make sure we're not getting any kind of a char on that bottom, given that we're directly over that fire pot. Again, you can do this in your oven just as easy, so if you're not a smoking person or grilling person, don't sweat it. This is still a wonderful, classic, delicious, tender beef dish. See you in a while. All right, the beef bourguignon has been on for about 2.5 hours and the meat is unbelievably tender. We're gonna go ahead and add in the last couple of items here before we strain it and make it absolutely ready to serve. Just look at that meat, how tender that is. That's how you know it is unbelievably ready. All right, we're gonna put our mushrooms in here real quick and let it go for about 15 minutes. I'm gonna add just a bit of water to that and 15 more. So the mushrooms have been in for about another 15 minutes or so, and what I've got here is just a nice empty pot to go ahead and get our gravy or sauce in, and a strainer. We're gonna use this to strain out some of the sauteed vegetables that gave it the flavor, the onions and carrots if you used them, any little pieces of garlic. So the first thing we're gonna do is take our glass vessel here and we're gonna put our beef and big pieces in that, and then we're gonna strain the rest into here. So we're just gonna go ahead and get our chunks of beef here, some of our mushrooms right out of there. Now I'm trying not to get the gravy out. I wanna pour that out through a sieve, but it's gonna fill up very quick if I pour the beef into the sieve as well. So I'm trying to get the big chunks of this out. Let's just put this aside for a moment. And now the next thing is we want to strain our sauce or our gravy here. I'm just gonna pour this right into our strainer. The reason being is we want to get a nice pure gravy here that we'll put into this dish along with our beef bourguignon as we heat it up. I'm pressing that down a little bit because there's just a ton of great flavor in all of that. Now the next steps can vary a little bit depending on how you like to do this. I am a fan of using the same pot because I think it has a ton of great flavor. We're just going to pour that back in there. Along with all of our meat, and we're going to put it back on the stovetop just to get this to the thickness we want. You can see that's pretty close. If you wipe your finger on it and see a clear line, that's what you ultimately want. I gotta tell you, it doesn't need a whole lot. Like, this is about there. I might do just a tad bit of salt in here. That's about all. Wow, look at that. All right, it's been 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and serve us up some of this and show you just what it looks like. All right, just gonna get a couple pieces of that bourguignon. Of course, I dripped it right on the handle. Well, there you have it, beef bourguignon. This is just plain in the plate, and this one is over a little bit of rice. It's time to give this a shot. Now, I'll tell you, it looks absolutely phenomenal. Let me just show you the close-up of this. So here's what I like best about this. When you actually pick this up, I'm just going to show you how easily this comes apart. Like, it just pulls apart. Absolutely tender. So I'm going to try it without the rice first, but I will tell you that the gravy and sauce that it comes with, that it makes, is just so rich with that beef broth and then the red wine. It's absolutely like fine dining. And we cooked it outside on our grill behind our house. Like, it's absolutely impressive. This is one that your buddies and your friends will talk about if you're having a little bit of a dinner party, having a few people over. Not exactly the thing you want to be holding on to like a burger when you're swimming in the pool, but carry this in for a little holiday get-together or a family dinner. Wow. It's so rich. The gravy that soaks into the rice. And this one I have a little pearl onion, mushroom, beef, and some rice. Unreal. All right, we'll let everybody else try it. Safe and happy grilling. We'll see y'all next time. Bye now. You came out with a fork? All of that fond on the bottom of the pot will just add to the whole dish. So let's pat this off, and then we'll get on the pot. That did not sound right. Holy shit. Oh, good. You're still here. Hey, do me a favor. If you've enjoyed this video, check out our whole PitBoss smoking combos right here and our Blackstone grilling videos right there. Thanks now.